Hey party people, Techno here, and I gotta apologize for the title of this video a little bit because cheap and night vision are pretty much mutually exclusive concepts at this point in time. So really this should have been titled Dovetail Mount Less Expensively or something along those lines. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to update the mount, my current mount, which is about as basic as you can get, about the worst mount that you could really have. I have a Neurotos Rhino 1 here. This is what I have been using, but it's about to be my former mount. So this is a pretty old design, and there are a lot of things that are not so ideal about it. And certainly with the newer mounts that have been out, which are much more expensive, by the way. The one thing about these is they're cheap and they're plentiful because nobody wants them. But yeah, it worked for the time being, but now it's time to upgrade. So with the Rhino 1, there's a lot of things that are left wanting on these. There's not a whole lot of articulation in this. You have a tilt here, and then these stow also if you have your night vision on. These are pretty high up on above your head, so they're a little unwieldy, and they're certainly not kept nice and close to your helmet or whatever you're using, for example. And then the other thing here is not only do they use a bayonet mount, but the bayonet mount is situated on these kind of notched tubular rails, which introduce some slop and some play. So you have a fair bit of play being introduced by these, which you can remedy to a degree with the bungees. And then on top of that, we're using the bayonet mount, which itself is an interface that has a fair bit of wobble in play. You can really see it exaggerated there once you get some leverage on that. And that's not even, of course, including the weight of the PVS-14. And then these themselves are not necessarily the most durable goods out there. The longevity of these can be pretty questionable. They tend to wear out around this pivot point, which, again, another area of play and articulation. And this isn't even a super solid, let's say, material here. It's plastic, as far as I can tell, right? So these are out. What we're going to do is we're going to replace this with a Neurotos Rhino 2, which, don't get me wrong, this is far from the latest and greatest in night vision mounts, right? But these are a step up in every way from the Rhino 1. For one, we go from aluminum construction to titanium. There are multiple points of articulation and adjustment here, still have that tilt. And then most importantly, the area where we interface to, well, in this case, the J-arm, because this is still using a bayonet mount, we'll get to that here in a moment, is now on these rails. So not only do you have a finer level of adjustment here, but you can lock these down and you can remove all of that play, which really just leaves us left with this less than ideal bayonet mount. And in this case, they did tighten up the tolerances on these, so this J-arm won't even fit in this Rhino 2. Regardless of how much I adjust the spring tension here, remove the magnet, doesn't really matter. It's just overall the dimensions are too large. I'd have to shave it down. But why bother doing that when we can upgrade this to a dovetail mounting solution? And that's what we're going to do now. And that leaves me, with the, I guess if it's ever needed as a backup, I have the JR and the Rhino 1. If I get a spare monocle or continue to upgrade, just have some backup parts here. Or I can just leave this to be left with use with the Skull Crusher. In any case, let's go ahead and get started on this conversion. So this is mounted, of course, to these rails, these kind of I-beam rails here. And this is retained in place by 2 roll pins at either end of those rails, one on each rail. So basically, all we have to do is first remove this, then we can slide this off, and we can replace it with this Neurotos PVS-15, PVS-18 socket. Now this will convert to dovetail, and then we can use something like this PVS-14 dual dovetail adapter, and we will completely have been switched over to dovetail mount for the PVS-14. Now this isn't actually designed to work with the Rhino 2. This is designed for the AK2 mount, but that doesn't matter because it fits just fine once we get rid of this socket. All right. Now, one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this brad nail just so you can see what I'm using. 18s here. This is going to go inside that roll pin to help keep me from deforming this too much. If at all possible, I'm going to try to reuse this roll pin when I reassemble this. If not, just get some extra roll pins and you pop another one back in there. No big deal. But up front, let's go ahead and pull that out. Never mind the SOG multi-tool flying apart there. Use the worst multi-tool with the best pliers to get this done. That's what I have on hand, so that's what I'm going to try to work with. All right, so we're going to want to pull this out, and I might end up smacking the camera here, so hopefully that's not the case. All right, not too bad. And then hopefully that nail kept me from deforming the top of this too much. I might have to use the pliers to pop that back off. There we go. So hopefully we'll get to reuse that. Cool. Now let's just pop this right off the end. Goodbye. We don't need you anymore. And we are going to add our dovetail adapter right on here. All right, look at that. So now this articulates back and forth, and we can lock this down nice and tight, and this allows us to install the dovetail adapter for the PVS-14. We'll get to that just here in a moment. I'm going to kind of test how difficult it's really going to be to get this back into place. I might skip it for the purposes of this video. It actually doesn't look like it's going to be bad at all. Get a roll pin punch here for that. Looks like a good size. Bench block. We'll just tap this back into place. Easy breezy, nothing to it. Cool. So now this is fully converted over. Good to go on that end. And then here's that dual dovetail adapter. So this is going to attach where the J-arm normally attaches to the PVS-14. And that's going to be oriented like this. So that will just screw on directly into that socket. And then there's our new setup. So this also has some additional side-to-side articulation, can flip this over to get use with the opposite eye in a pinch. But this is an overall setup that gets you that nice solid mount, much improved over the Rhino 1, use of dovetail. So at this point, you know, pick up a pair of DTNVGs, maybe a bridge mount for another PVS-14, whatever. This gives me a more opportunity to grow with my night vision setup and adapt to more of the systems and accessories that are out there while keeping the costs minimal, let's say. I can't remember if I mentioned it before, but a lot of those really advanced mounts, those much nicer mounts out there like the G24, the low stow, they're going to run you around $500 for just the mount. So like I said, you can get the, you're probably going to pay tops $100 for a Rhino 2. And then in terms of converting this over, you're going to pay about $80, I believe, for the socket here. And then you're going to pay maybe in the neighborhood of, well, actually, let me just check over here on the side, about $170, $175 for this. So again, cheap. It's night vision. It's not cheap, but you can get this whole thing put together and assembled for less than the cost of just a typical dovetail mount, and get a lot of that functionality. So this should carry me through for quite a while to come. I don't see this. I mean, this is going to be a massive improvement over what I was using. So I don't see being feeling like I'm missing out on anything for a while to come on this yet. And looking forward to being able to potentially work with some of those bridge mounts and who knows what else is in the future. Hard to say. But hopefully, if you are looking to do anything like this helped out as far as the process of converting and everything like that, or at the very least, hopefully you found it interesting. But I appreciate everybody watching. Thank you very much, guys. Until next time, take care. I will catch you later. Under pressure.